last. Ransomware attacks are a growing problem. A French subsidiary of Toshiba said today that earlier this month it had been targeted by the same group blamed for recently crippling the US's largest network of fuel pipelines.
Hospital officials in the western Indian state of Goa say 15 more COVID patients have died due to a suspected drop in oxygen pressure. Family members said by the time the pressure was restored at a state-run hospital, it was too late for some of the patients. The latest incident came just days after 26 people died under similar circumstances at the same facility. You're listening to World News from the BBC. The organisers of a Japanese campaign to cancel the Tokyo Olympics because of COVID-19 have submitted a petition to the capital's governor. It's signed by more than 350,000 people. From Tokyo, here's Rupert Wingfield-Hayes.
This coming Monday, Hiroshima was due to host the latest stage in the Olympic torch relay. Now that is being cancelled as the city joins a growing list of areas in Japan forced into a state of emergency as a fourth wave of COVID infections, driven by new variants, continues to spread rapidly. Japan is now running at around 6,000 new infections every day and around 100 deaths. Yesterday it was revealed that a 21-year-old man in Kyoto died from COVID in his flat after repeated attempts to get admitted to a hospital failed.
The British government minister in charge of preparing for a major United Nations climate summit later this year has said the world needs to tackle global warming with the same urgency as it's fighting coronavirus. Alok Sharma said November's COP26 summit in Glasgow represents the last chance of limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. A top official suspended from his role in South Africa's governing party has taken President Cyril Ramaphosa to court, ratcheting up an internal power struggle. The ANC's Secretary-General Ace Makashule has asked the court to declare the party's new step-aside rule unconstitutional. He was suspended as a result of the instruction whereby ANC members charged with corruption must vacate their posts within 30 days. Mr. Makashule denies involvement in a multi-million-dollar scandal. A Holocaust memorial centre in Ukraine has officially opened a synagogue at Babyn Yar, the site of one of the worst massacres of the Second World War. Nazi troops murdered more than 33,000 Jews in September 1941. BBC News.
天天在一起，天天用心听，听见台北的声音。FM 93.1，幸福永远属于你。
公民总主笔，
方恩格时间。
谁当家？
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 你当家？
谁当家？
谁当家？
谁当家？我当家。你当家？我当家。到底谁当家？你来当家。
President's Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. I'm your host, Ross Darrell-Feingold. Our very special guest today is Kim Young, He Jin-rong. Kim Young, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you. Selamat malam. Saukaban takeho.
Kim Young is one of the most interesting and diverse people I have met in Taipei. Kim Young, you're an educator. You're an advocate for what we call new citizens, and we'll get into more detail what a new citizen is. You know a lot about Indonesia and Southeast Asia, and you're one of the most knowledgeable people in Taipei.
Thank you.
About that. But before we get into all those details, tell us a bit about your background, where you were born, where you grew up.
Okay, I was born in Indonesia, but because my father was a Taiwanese and my mother is Indonesian, and my mother married to Taiwan. Actually, I was when my mother was pregnant, about 6 or 7 months. She brought me when I was still inside her belly into Indonesia, and I was given birth in Indonesia. And 3 months later, I was sent back to Taiwan. So I was growing up and educated most of the time in Taiwan. But it's more my parents older me in Taiwan, but I was produced in Indonesia, Jakarta, the capital city of Indonesia, and export back to Taiwan. So like I have most of my time in Taiwan growing up here, just like most Taiwanese. But I was like speaking Indonesian with my mother at home. I think that's a little bit different with other Taiwanese. But actually we have more and more the so-called new residents or new citizens, 新住民 in Taiwan. Actually, like we are already the 4th biggest group in Taiwan after Fujian, Hokkien, Hakka, and Mainlander. And we even surpass in the total number than the Aboriginal people. So actually, within the 5 major ethnic groups in Taiwan, the new residents now is the 4th biggest group.
That's not something that we actually hear a lot, though, right? Because when people describe Taiwan or the ethnic makeup Taiwan, it's usually what you just said, right? People will say there's Hokkien, Fujianese, people who came or descended from people who came in 1949 at the end of the Civil War in China, and Hakka, and indigenous or Aboriginal. And the populations that you just mentioned, unfortunately, they often seem to be ignored.
Yeah, a lot of people forget that actually we are already, or we used to be considered a pure Chinese or Han people country. But the fact is, I think like starting like early 1990s, a lot of people from like first mainland China and later Southeast Asia, especially Vietnam and Indonesia, have already been a migrant to Taiwan. Most of them are through the marriage, like marrying female Southeast Asians, marrying to Taiwanese males. So I think that there are more and more non-Chinese speakers in Taiwan. Like usually we speak like Mandarin and also Hokkien and Hakka. But actually I think the 4th most widely spoken language in Taiwan probably is Vietnamese, because we have more than 200,000 Vietnamese women marrying to Taiwan, and most of them have already naturalized into like the Taiwan citizen, and including their 2nd generation. So we are having more and more people speaking more than like just Chinese language. We are more and more like a immigrant country, just like the United States or Singapore.
And you mentioned 2nd generation, and you also mentioned that with your mom, you growing up, you did speak Bahasa Indonesian at home. Did you feel a strong cultural connection to Indonesia because of the language or other things that your mother shared with you, or did you still feel a stronger connection to Taiwan culture growing up because you were here?
I think just like most like Chinese Americans or Asian Americans or Taiwanese Americans, basically they are still Americans because they belong or they recognize to the soil they were born. Okay, so for me, I think I'm just like most 2nd generation Southeast Asian Taiwanese. I do recognize to the soil of Taiwan, and I'm a part of this country, and I do also agree with my father's type, because my father was from mainland China, but at the same time, I'm also recognized to the culture of Indonesia. I love the language, I love the culture. Unfortunately, a lot of 2nd generation Taiwanese, I mean like 2nd generation Vietnamese Taiwanese or Indonesian Taiwanese, because in the past, I think it was because subject to the discrimination. A lot of 2nd generation Southeast Asian Taiwanese were now there to like recognize their mother's Thai. Yeah, so a lot of them.
When you say they don't recognize, you mean they don't talk about it, they keep it a secret?
They don't want to speak their mother tongue, like the mother's language, and some of them even feel ashamed to be a son or a daughter of a Vietnamese woman or Indonesian woman. I think that's quite bad. Okay, fortunately I was, I think I probably because I was very stubborn. So since I was very young, I was very proud that I'm a son of an Indonesian woman. Of course, I do not hate China or Chinese culture, but I think I was very proud to be to recognize to my father's culture and my mother's culture, and also the culture of this island. So I think like I'm recognizing to all these different cultures, because In fact, I think the world we live today is already a very variant country. Like we are, like almost every country is full with the content of diversity. Like even Japan, you do have some like Japanese citizens that are actually given birth by a American father. Okay, even like we know that there's an NBA player. What's his name? Yeah. Okay, I cannot pronounce. I know the kanji is Bashan, right? His father is from Zaire or like African country, and his mother is a Japanese, but like he speaks perfect Japanese. But he also highly recognized the father's type from the African culture. I think that is even a country like Japan. We used to imagine that Japan is a country with homogeneity. Okay, what's the word?
They're very homogeneous.
Yeah, very homogeneous, but it's no longer like that.
Okay, what about when you were at school with the other children? Were they accepting? Were they bullying? At the time when you were growing up, how did the other children deal with the reality that your mother was Indonesian?
Okay, that's a interesting question, because many people suppose me that during my childhood I supposed to suffer a lot of discrimination, something like that. But the truth is, not just based on my own personal experience, but also based on my research. First, what kind of students or kids are most subject to be discriminated? First, female students. Because, okay, I'm not sexist. I'm just telling you that because when people are discriminating you, usually it's based first impression based on your outer appearance, right? For boys, we usually boys do not care that much about appearance. Yeah, even though they are laughing me at you look so dark like a Southeast Asian. Okay, I do not care that much. So the truth is, based on my research, there were more female students or female kids subject to discrimination more than boys. Okay, the second thing was because I was a top student, I was performing so good. So usually, the discrimination happening on those ill performing students. Fortunately, I was rather performing good. But if you are like a performing student, like people may blame you like, oh, you are such a bad student, I guess, because your mother is a Vietnamese. So you are not able to study Chinese and you are not able to do good in academics. But personally, I think I was lucky. So when I was young, like when my mom came to the school to pick me up, like sometimes speaking Indonesian with me, like some of my students, some of my classmates, they were asking me like, hey, He Jin-rong, what kind of language was that? And I say, okay, I was speaking Indonesian with my mother. And then next day, like in the classroom, like some of the students may say, hey, sir, to the teacher, say, He Jin-rong's mother is Indian. Okay, so they speak Indian. So He Jin-rong is now a polite Chinese. 不是一个堂堂正正中国人。I remember I was like raising my hand and object. I say, no, my mother is not Indian. She is the Indonesian. Okay, sometimes like, I should say like in the past, Taiwanese people are kind of, should I say narrow-minded or having like lacking of like worldwide perspective. Like sometimes they are even confused with India and Indonesia. Okay, 印尼与印度, they are sometimes even confused. But just like most of people in the world today, some of them are confused with Taiwan and Thailand. Okay, so basically I think probably because I was stubborn, so I do not feel so like hurt about that kind of discrimination. But I think more like female students or female like girls were suffering to that kind of discrimination.
Did you have a chance to travel a lot when you were a child? Did your mother take you on periodic visits to Indonesia? Did you see other parts of Southeast Asia?
When I was young, because I was from a rather poor, economically poor family, my family was considered like was recognized by what's it called? Middle lower income family, 中低收入户. So when I was during my elementary school years, I think I had traveled to Indonesia only 2 times. But because my mother, in order to save money, she bought a cheap ticket. So we had to try to transit in. I remember once in Hong Kong, and the other time was in Singapore. So when I was in the elementary school, I had been only to Indonesia, Singapore, and Hong Kong. Of course, that's it. But when I was young, when I traveled to Indonesia during my elementary years, I remember it was when I was 11 years old. I went to Indonesia and I witnessed, of course, there were lots of poor people, economically poor people, struggling for their lives. But there were also rich people, billionaires in Indonesia. They are super rich, not just Chinese Indonesians, but all kinds of Indonesians. I was so impressed that because our education in Taiwan used to tell us that the social justice, fairness is very important in a society, but probably I was very evil. I feel that, there's something good also for a kind of disparity in a society. You have the so-called poor people, and you are able to hire them with a lower salary and in order to enjoy very good service. But at the same time, you were also having the rich people to be the good customers. So when I was young, after I visited Indonesia, I was thinking about one day I should become a billionaire in Indonesia, and I can have a taxi, I can have a driver, I have a housemaid, servants, I can enjoy a kind of life like a emperor or something like that.
But when you went to visit your family in Indonesia, didn't they treat you like an emperor? Weren't they just so happy to see you, this relative, this son who lives in far away in Taiwan? Didn't they just treat you the best on those short visits because they were happy to see you?
Yeah, but not the best. But I was treated just ordinary because you know why? In Taiwan now we have the lowest birth rate in the world. In contrast, in Indonesia, I think it was one of the highest, the country with the highest birth rate in Asia probably. My mother had 9 siblings, and totally from my mother's side, I had 36 cousins. 36 cousins. So when I was in Indonesia, they just treat me like, someone who is just one of them. I don't feel I was that special, but they don't discriminate me because I was just one of them. Because some of my cousins were studying in Singapore or probably Hong Kong, somewhere else. So to be a foreigner or half foreigner was not that surprise to my cousins. So I think that's also the good thing for Indonesia, because in some sense, I think Indonesia even enjoys higher degree of diversity than Taiwan, to some sense.
Speaking of being foreign or perceived as foreign, you went to university here in Taiwan, undergraduate, and did the other students or the professors or even the other foreign students, did they think of you as a foreign student or as a Taiwan student when you were in university here in Taiwan?
At the beginning, I was, of course, considered just because I was taking the joint college exam, 大学联考, just like other Taiwanese. But later, I remember later some of my classmates and the professors in the university realized that, actually I was born in Indonesia and my mom was from Indonesia, that's so ridiculous because I tell you what, most of the classmates do not care that much, they just treat me like one of them. Because we also have international students from Malaysia, the Philippines, or South Korea, right? Instead, I was so shocked because one of my professor, even though she was the dean of the college, but she once told me that, she said, students like the second generation immigrant students like you are having the problem in Chinese language. I was so shocked. What the hell? Do I have any problem with Chinese? Okay, because she knew that, okay, my mother was an Indonesian wife, Indonesian woman marrying to Taiwan, and she supposed me, like, she assumed me that my language, my Mandarin is so bad. So she said, probably we should open a class, a Chinese class for students like you in our university. Oh, come on. Do you know I went to Zhengda, okay, NCCU, I think it's like one of the top 5 universities in Taiwan, and I do have no problem in Chinese. But that's the stereotype made even a professor like her to have such a prejudice, feeling that, okay, because your mother is an Indonesian, so you're supposed to have the problem in Chinese. Oh my goodness. Actually, in the Taiwanese society today, we are more eager to save your mother tongue, right? 抢救母语. Have you ever heard any Taiwanese say 抢救国语,抢救中文? Do we need to save our Chinese proficiency? Come on. So sometimes I realize that all kinds of stereotype or racial profiling, they are something social.
See, I really thought you were going to say that the dean of the college came to you and said, because your mother's Indonesian, we're going to give you a big discount on your
oh my goodness,
your tuition.
I hope so. No.
Or we're gonna increase your grade automatically by 10% because we just assume you had it tough growing up.
Oh my goodness. No, yeah. Sometimes, some of the immigrant mothers, they are complaining about this issue because I'm sorry to our Aboriginal fellows, because like in our era, like 20 years ago, when like Aboriginal students, when they like take the college entrance exam, they have like 20% or 25% extra points. And some of, not me, okay, some of the like Southeast Asian immigrant spouse or their kids say that it's not fair, because they believe that both Aboriginal people and we new immigrants have been discriminated by why they have the extra points, like 20% extra point, while new immigrants have no such benefit. Some of them say that, but...
And what's the answer from the government and the people who decide these things?
Okay, thank God the very low birth rate solved this problem, because it's very easy to enter college now, because like 20 years ago when I was young, I think like the college entrance rate, the enroll rate was only like 35 to 40%. Now it's almost 100%. So like even our government today, they have already offered more vacancies for like Southeast Asian immigrant spouses. So if they want to enter college, like almost whenever they want, they can enter the private university. That's totally fine for them. But for public university, we say like the higher ranking universities, they still need to struggle. Yeah.
Then you went to Hawaii to get a PhD, and of course that is a very, very diverse society. What do you remember best about living in Hawaii, given your own background?
Well, okay, the first thing that came into my mind when I went to Hawaii, like, I was so shocked because, like, most Taiwanese or Asians, we imagine that American society should be, like, very white. Like, all the white people are, like, Americans. But in reality, like, after living in Hawaii and visit California and New York for many times, I realized that, okay, the United States is a society with very high degree of diversity, especially in race. Like, for example, in Hawaii, like, I think like Asian, like whites and like Pacific Islanders, like each of them counts for like 30% of the total population. So in Hawaii, it gave me the impression, the real reality about probably the United States is that no matter what is your color, what's the color of your skin, you are still an American. And also, when I was there, I met a lot of friends from European countries, say like Sweden, Denmark, and like sorry, I don't remember some of the countries from the East Europe. Yeah, they look white, but sorry, some of them speak like worse English than I did. So that gave me a kind of self-esteem that, okay, I have the self-confidence that, okay, your English proficiency has nothing to do with the color of skin. Because like some of the Taiwanese believe that, sorry, I know that you are European American, you are white, okay, but some of the Taiwanese believe that white people speak better English than like the colored people or Asian people. Like, I think that's ridiculous.
And you also spent some time studying in Germany as well, which has long had a lot of foreign students, including from everywhere from Turkey to East Asia. What did you like about living in Germany?
Sorry, but do we have the German audience? Sorry, I do not like to live in Germany. Okay. Germans are good people. They are very nice. And the place I went to was Tübingen. It's in Baden-Württemberg, right? It's in the southern part of Germany. The place it's basically a college town for the University of Tübingen. A very beautiful place. But the place was so boring. Sorry, but German people are, again, sorry, kind of boring, but they are nice. You know what I mean? Like, for example, in the road, if I get lost, I need someone to, hey, would you, excuse me, would you please take me to the bus station? And as a German, he will nod your head and take me there. And that's it. And I say thank you, and you will nod your head again to me.
Well, on that note, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue talking about new citizens in Taiwan.
It's not about the bad thing of German. Sorry.
You're listening to Residence Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station.
长照服务需求、长照特别扣除额问题，请拨打1966长照专线，5分钟内通话免付费。一通电话让长期照顾管理专员协助申请长期照顾服务及解答长期照顾特别扣除额相关问题。以上内容由台北市政府卫生局提供。
爸爸应酬不开车，黄色嘟嘟安全多。应酬喝酒不过量，安全回家最上道。爸爸要平安回家哦。
喝酒不开车，开车不喝酒哦。让我们一起尊重生命，拥抱亲情。
亲爱的朋友，您还在吸烟吗？快拿着健保卡到戒烟门诊，或拨打戒烟专线0800636363。提醒您，最近兴起的电子烟、加热烟，因为没有浓浓的烟臭味，就被认为无害。其实已经证实，新兴烟品都有二手烟及三手烟的危害，甚至还有爆炸的风险。我是义工蔡依林，所有烟品都 get out。我拒烟，我骄傲。
我是疾管署防疫师陈婉清。防疫期间，如果您是正在居家隔离或检疫的民众，请留在家中或隔离检疫场所，不可随意外出。若您在隔离检疫期间出现发烧、嗅味觉异常、腹泻、呼吸道症状或身体不适，请佩戴口罩，联系卫生局或1922，并依指示就医，不可自行搭乘大众运输。如果您有洗牙、健检等非紧急医疗需求，请先暂缓延后。
有政府，请安心。资讯由疾管署提供。
我是指挥中心疫情监测组组长周志浩。校园请落实防疫措施，请家长注意，孩子发烧或身体不舒服时，赶快就医，并且在家休息。也请大家共同配合，保持教室通风，使用空调时对角要各开一扇窗。餐点分配请由固定人员执行。打赛前请量测体温，清洁双手，佩戴口罩。搭乘学生交通车或大众运输时，也请记得佩戴口罩。
有政府，请安心。资讯由疾管署提供。
家己电台家己主持咧。大家好，我是郭文铁，我伫台北广播电台。
谁当家？
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 你当家？
谁当家？
谁当家？
谁当家？我当家。你当家？
我当家。
到底谁当家？你来当家。
Welcome back to Residence Messenger. Our guest today is He Jinrong, Kang Kim Young, advocate for new citizens. In 2016, Kim Young, you received a very prestigious award. You were recognized as one of Taiwan's most outstanding young people. You got to meet President Tsai. You got a nice sash around, put around your neck. But what did winning that recognition mean for the new citizen community?
Okay. I was very lucky because I was the first person, and so far the only person, the only second generation Southeast Asian Taiwanese or second generation immigrant to earn the reward to get the laureate of the outstanding young Taiwanese. I think I was sorry, but it's kind of showing off. I was able to motivate a lot of kids in Taiwan, especially those like second generation immigrants, because in the past, a lot of them feel like ashamed, like, okay, I'm from a poor family and my mother is a Vietnamese, so I'm not there to tell others that, okay, I'm from a immigrant of Vietnamese mother, something like that. But I think after I won the prize, I was very proud to tell all the Taiwanese people that even someone from like a lower income family and even someone with a Southeast Asian mother can still be like enjoy very high esteem in this society. as long as you are able to work hard enough. So after winning the prize, I visit many counties and cities in Taiwan. I was trying to gather all these second generation Taiwanese people, the youngsters, and telling that okay, you can do better than Professor He Jinrong. Yeah, even though, okay, I should not say even though, sorry. Because your mother is a Vietnamese or is an Indonesian, that is something even better that makes you having the multicultural ties, which is very benefit to your academic performance, or in the future it makes you easier to get a job anywhere in the world.
Well, why are these groups often segregated? I'm referring to women, spouses who come from China. We often call them in Mandarin, we call them Lu Pei, right? And then if they're from Southeast Asia, we tend to call them YG Xinyan. But if it's, for example, a European or American who marries a Taiwanese, we don't put him in those groups. We don't call him like a YG Xinyan, right? Now, why do we separate things this way in Taiwan?
I think it's related to our constitution, right? Because sorry, I do not like to talk about politics, but because mainland China or People's Republic of China is still considered a part of our nation. So technically, legally, we cannot call those someone from mainland China as a foreigner. So that's why we cannot call them 外籍新娘, the foreign spouse. So that's why we call them mainland spouse, 大陆配偶 or 大陆新娘, so mainland bride. So now, because I think it was starting about 10 years ago, the Bureau of Immigration of this country just classify all the mainland spouses, foreign spouses from Southeast Asia and other those from European countries marrying to Taiwan. They are all considered, although all be called 新住民, new residents or new citizens. So basically today, legally, anyone who came from mainland China, Southeast Asia, or East Europe, or any other country, and married to Taiwan, or had already naturalized into the citizen of this country, are called new residents or new citizens, 新住民. But because usually when for those Europeans marrying to Taiwan, just like one of my colleagues in Danjiang University, she married from Poland, and she get a PhD from Belgium. Okay, the so-called, the society stereotype is that most Europeans are now the people having the lower social status. For mainlanders, because they speak perfect Chinese, just like most Taiwanese, so they do not have the problem to be incorporated into this society. Basically, their language proficiency is okay. So most people believe that only for Southeast Asian spouses, when they marry to Taiwan, they have the disadvantage first in terms of social economic status. And the second is in terms of language proficiency. They are having this kind of double disadvantage. That's why when we say new residents, we always talk about Southeast Asian immigrant women mostly, because we consider, or the society's stereotype consider that they are the most disadvantaged people in Taiwan.
What are the issues of common concern for these communities in Taiwan? I mean, you mentioned some of the stereotypes around language, but other than just language issues, if you ask a parent, the spouse of a Taiwanese here in Taiwan who does come from Indonesia or Vietnam or Cambodia, what are the issues that are on all of their minds, something that might be common or maybe unique to Indonesians but different for Vietnamese? What issues are they concerned about?
You mean the first generation or the second?
The first generation or the second generation?
I think the issue are quite... for the second generation, I think we, just like me, we all recognize that we are Taiwanese, but some of us do not recognize the mother's Thai, and a lot of second generation immigrants, they are not able to speak the mother tongue. In contrast, for the first generation, of course, they are perfect in their own Southeast Asian language, but for the Chinese, some of them are still having the language incapable to speak the Chinese. Okay, so that is the first thing I think for the first generation to concern. The second is when doing business or run for in the public sector, run for the position of civil servant, they are still lacking the ties to understand the whole system, and also when doing business and when running, for example, running an election or taking the exam to be a legalized civil servant, they are still not familiar with the system. They are still not familiar with the law system of this country, especially for lots of Indonesians or Vietnamese. For example, some of my assumption may be a little bit racial profiling. A lot of Vietnamese people, because they were from a communist country, so they believe that whenever doing business, they have to have very close relationship with the politicians or with the government officers. But probably this is not a suitable way to do business in Taiwan, because we all know that it's more important for media than for the political influence, right? And for a lot of Indonesians, sometimes they are having that kind of legal sense. A lot of Indonesian people, when they are doing the restaurant or cafeteria business, they are not even prepared for invoice, 发票 or something like that. When I was in Fengsha University, it was always a problem when I held an activity in the Indonesian restaurant, because usually most of them was not prepared for the invoice. So that was also a problem for me, because I cannot give the receipt to the university authority, so they cannot refund me. So, I think for the second generation is about the lacking of the mother tongue. But the first generation is totally different. They need more the knowledge or to learn more about the legal system in this country in order to get into the business. Yeah.
Very often we'll see central government agencies or local government agencies, city and county government agencies across Taiwan, they'll promote what they're doing for these communities, right? They'll advertise an event, maybe it's around a holiday, or some kind of classes for first generation spouses. Do they do a good job with these things? Do the central and local government agencies do a good job with these kinds of events, or is it more just for show?
Should I say? Okay, this is a radio station from Taipei City government. Okay, just kidding. I think most of them are doing acceptable. Okay, they are not doing that bad. But I think for the central government, the problem is because the agency which is regulating all immigrant affairs is only the Bureau of Immigration, which is under the Ministry of Internal Affairs, Interior Affairs. It's only the third level institution, 三级机关. So basically, I think the resource and power is not that enough. I hope, in the future, the central government should promote the Bureau of Immigration to be a ministry. That's what I believe. Okay, so they are good, but because they are not having that much resources, so that makes it a problem. Okay, for the local government, personally, I think for 6 of our municipalities, they are all doing good enough. But I have to say, the best of the best are the city government of Taoyuan and city government of Taipei. Why? Because for city government of Taoyuan, Taoyuan is the first city in Taiwan which allows new residents to have their own initiatives. That they are able to raise their own initiatives, 提案 to the city government of Taoyuan. So it's not like the government taking care of the new residents, but the new residents are able to raise their own idea to promote their own rights. Okay, I think that's the good thing for Taoyuan. And for the good thing of Taipei City is, Taipei is the first city to have the institution taking care of those, how to say that, illegal migrant workers' baby. Okay, because in Taiwan, a lot of migrant worker women, they had sex with someone and they got pregnant, but because they were not able to give birth to the baby while still working in Taiwan, so like they just abandoned their kids in like hospitals and let the kids become orphans. Because their parents of these orphans, these babies are not recognizable. We don't know whether their father is a Taiwanese or not. So they are not able to get the citizenship of Taiwan. So a lot of government agencies, they are afraid of touch this issue. But I think Taipei city government is very brave. Taipei is the only city who has an institution responsible for taking care of these nationless babies. Okay, so I think that is the best thing for Taipei city government.
So you talked about the central and local governments, but what about the political parties? You served on a committee for New Citizens with the Minjindang, the DPP, and you also ran for office with a different political party, with the Minzhongdang, the Taiwan People's Party. So do the political parties do a good job on these issues, or is there also room for improvement in the political party?
So far, I think most political parties are not qualified enough, not doing enough for in this regard. Like even, for example, like the ruling DPP. When I was one of the committee members in the what's it called, 新住民委员会, the
New Citizens Committee.
Okay, I should say, the committee was controlled by local Taiwanese, and we had a lot of immigrant women to be the committee member. But usually the way it works like this. The immigrant women, they issue the problem they are facing, like they are having the shortage of their salary, or they are having some issue in applying for like ARC something, and they raise the issue to the committee, and the committee, because it's the ruling party, okay, they just transfer the case to a government agency. After getting the response, they bring it back to the committee in the party and give it to the woman who raised the issue of the question. I was feeling that why bother? Why they need to transfer through the committee? And why now they cannot organize to like have a caucus or an affiliate of the new immigrants which work together with the party. Okay, so they are still doing the committee like taking baby. Okay, they are taking the immigrant woman just like taking care of the kids or baby, because in some sense, I think these politicians still believe that immigrant family members or the members from the immigrant family are not strong enough. They are not able to run for that kind of political positions. I think that's also the reason why they are not there to let any of them to have the real power. So they do not have any decision power. I think it was true for both the committee in DPP and the opposite KMP. Okay, so I think the only solution to this problem is they have to raise or to nominate an immigrant or immigrant spouse or the second generation immigrant to run for the member of the parliament. Not just like you set up a committee while giving them no power. I think that's useless. And that's also, I was like turned hostile. Okay, I was turned hostile to DPP. I say, the chairperson was Zhou Rongtai. I asked him, can you guarantee? I think it was in April 2 years ago. When I was meeting him, I asked him a question, say, are you able to guarantee that you are going to nominate an immigrant spouse or second generation immigrant okay, anyone from the new resident community, okay, to nominate her or him as the candidate for the election. Or he say, okay, 我无法保证. I cannot guarantee that kind of thing. I think that was a kind of humiliation to me. Sorry to use the word, because I think most politicians do not believe that someone from the new resident family are able to run the election, to get involved in politics just like anyone else in this country. They still look us down. Okay, that's my feeling at that time.
Kim Young, we're almost out of time, but this week also was a very important holiday for some members of the new resident community, because it was the Muslim holiday of Eid at the end of Ramadan. Who's celebrating this holiday in Taiwan? Who are they?
Yeah, mostly like Muslims, and we have the number one country of origin for our migrant workers are from Indonesia, and we have most Indonesians are Muslims. So the biggest event for celebrating Eid Mubarak, or we say Idul Fitri in Indonesian. Eid Mubarak should be Arab, right? So the biggest group to celebrate this event in Taiwan are mostly Indonesian migrant workers. So wherever, I think during these days, but probably because now it's due to the serious situation of the COVID-19. Yeah, otherwise, like after the Ramadan, after the 5th month, you are able to see a lot of like Indonesians or Muslims from other countries in Taipei Main Station and in Da'an Forest Park are celebrating the Eid Mubarak, especially for the Da'an Forest Park, because it's close to the mosque there.
And before we go, Kim Young, if people want to learn more about new communities, new citizens in Taiwan, what's a good resource that you recommend?
Okay, like your show.
Thank you.
Okay, like I think one of the resource is, I think FTV, Formosa TV 民视 is having that kind of show, or 三立在台湾站起, right? And also, like, we have some celebrities who is really famous coming from our community, like Wu Feng. I don't know his name in Turkish. Like Wu Feng is a celebrity. He's a Turkish man married to a Taiwanese woman, and he speaks very good Chinese and both his own language. And probably you can also browse my Facebook page. Yeah, and we are still raising a lot of these kind of issues. And if you are interested in the things of new immigrant families, and I think first you may go to 140. Okay, 140 is a volunteer organization organized by the young kids, or they are like 20 or 30 something young kids. They are helping or trying to empower migrant workers and immigrant women in Taiwan to train them with some skills. And that's a good organization. And another is 灿烂时光, Brilliant Time, one of the bookstore. They are holding a lot of activities regarding the migrant worker, immigrant spouses, and Southeast Asian countries. Okay, 灿烂时光. That's it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you very much, Kim Young, Kung Kim Young, He Jinrong, immigrant advocate here in Taiwan. And thank you so much for educating us on these important communities in Taiwan.
Yeah, that's my pleasure. 谢谢. Okay.
You've been listening to Residents Messenger on Taipei Broadcasting Station. Have a great weekend.
Okay, terima kasih.